Good evening. We continue our journey and we are almost at the end of our day. Now, in the leadership track, we have a very interesting angle on how we can become a better organization through a mindset to think of it as an evolutionary process. It's nothing new, but Michael has given it a lot of thought, and it's in the way of also going beyond that. So he's going to present some ideas, some of his concepts that are part of a change program. Michael, please start with a few words about yourself, and the floor is yours for the next 45 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lamont, for hosting me here. It's my pleasure to join all of you. I'm going to be speaking about a book we just released this year, Leading Beyond Change, a practical guide to business agility. And some of the subjects I'm touching on will probably be familiar to you. But what's interesting about our work is it's like we have this 10% that makes all the difference in the world, right? So we're here to re-examine, review from a different perspective of what is leading, what is moving into beyond the future of work, what is change, and how do we rethink change? So what are we exploring here? Well, let me tell you about myself first. My original background is as a hardcore technologist. So I've got published papers in artificial intelligence, originally around computer vision robotics research. I've been in IT for a long time in delivery roles, in leadership roles, and I've been involved with Agile for most of that time, understanding how do we get these new ways of working functioning, both working as a leader within an organization, as well as an outside trainer, consultant, advisor to executives and organizations. How do we go into this kind of shift? And what I realized is that we need to open up to a much broader world view of understanding what does it really take to create high performance. So that's the perspective I'm speaking you from. Now, I wrote a book in 2012, an Agile Adoption and Transformation Survival Guide, working with organizational culture, to start this discussion, this understanding that to get agile or other new ways of working functioning, these hopes we have for creating high performance, requires understanding what culture is, what that context is. And now, fast forward to 2021, we're talking about a much, much broader conversation. That's the conversation we're going to explore today, is how do we lead beyond change? Now, before I go into that, I want to talk about what is the usual approach to high performance? Everybody wants high performance. Everybody wants better results. Everyone wants to be more successful. And people go to scaling frameworks, things like Scrum at Scale. The Scaled Agile framework's very, very popular as an industry leader, or the Spotify model. People are looking for these new ways of working to unlock not just team, but organizational high performance. And what we've seen with these approaches is that Agile fails to create high performance organizations. I'm going to repeat this. Agile, if you're using it, is most likely failing to create a high performance organization in your context. You've probably gotten some benefits. Congratulations, good work. But what are we seeing here across the industry? This is 50,000 teams, thousands of companies saying, well, geez, this company philosophy or culture is at odds with core Agile values. Managers don't really fully support this. We're seeing resistance to change. So if you're seeing any of the symptoms listed here, you're doing Agile the usual way. So what we're inviting you to do is to step out of that. How do we step beyond understanding Agile in the usual way? How do we understand a broader perspective? Now, really, we're going to take you on a journey as we move from these two different books to understand how do we create high performance, not just success with Agile, but how do we actually create a high performance organizational system? What does that even mean? How do we understand the journey involved? So how do we get high performance? Well, the journey we're going to go on is to understand that things like culture, leadership, and organizational change. For decades, people have been studying these, writing about these, talking about these. And the understanding we offer here today is to understand that these are not separate. These are actually integrated. They're deeply, deeply integrated. And we need to have a shared understanding. That's the intersection of these circles in order to unlock success with any of them. That's this journey we're on. So we're here to talk about the evolution of high performance. How do you evolve high performance in your organization? We're going to talk about it from a couple of perspectives. Every organization wants results, whether you call it business agility or the ability to thrive in a VUCA world, faster delivery, more adaptable to changing customer and market needs. And when we look at it, people are looking to agile and other new ways of working to deliver these kinds of results. But then stepping back to say, well, how do we create an environment where agile can flourish? And we see, well, wait, when we have a healthy organizational environment and culture, then agile will work. But if we don't have the right environment, agile won't take root. We won't get the full benefits we hope for. Then looking back even further, well, what does it take to do that? Well, we need leaders who are creating that healthy organizational environment, that healthy culture. Well, how do we get that? It's for all of us to show up as our best self and help create leaders at all levels. That's the only way we're actually going to be able to create the high performance we hope for. So this is kind of giving you this kind of law of cause and effect of where do we need to focus over here and through here to get the results, the outcomes we want, the high performance. So it's a very, very different, more depth going to root cause to say, well, where do we need to focus to get the outcomes we hope for? Now, what we discovered on this journey is that ultimately, and every organization is dealing with this, every place that's trying to introduce agile or other new ways of working are ultimately trying to go on this journey from, we call it a traditional organization depicted by Jenga, to an evolutionary organization depicted by this tree. That's ultimately the journey that each organization is embarking. And what we see is that there are many layers. There's how do we understand reality? How do leaders see themselves and others? How do they function and show up? How do they use power? How are people treated? How does that create an organizational culture that's either inclusive or not? How do we approach change? And ultimately, what are the results we create? And so what we discovered is that we need a shift at all levels of organizational functioning. We can't just change one thing and expect a different kind of result. So the way to get a high performance organization over here, or at least journey on the road to a high performance organization, requires a shift across multiple dimensions of our organizational functioning. So this is what we put together. That's what we call a practical guide to business agility, to show what are the changes that are needed in these different aspects of functioning to go on this kind of journey. Now, let's just talk about, why do I say journey? What does that even mean? A very important realization, and most organizations are not there, most people are not there, is to realize that going on this kind of shift within an organization is itself an evolutionary journey. There's no defined endpoint. There's only a desire for those who partake in it to get better, to become more adaptable, more able to thrive, more able to have this, we call it VUCability, the ability to thrive in the VUCA world, right? So going to the shift from like, oh, we're here, we need to get here, fixed cause and effect, to understanding it's an emergent, ongoing journey. That's the first fundamental shift that's required to even begin to embark on it. So that's what we're speaking about, is how do we understand this evolutionary journey? How do we understand this multi-dimensional evolution of different aspects of organizational functioning? So we're going to dive into some of those details. So let's go into the beyond. Beyond means the future of work, whether you call it an exponential organization or teal organizations. What is high performance organizations? What is that really all about? So we're going to share something called the self-evolutionary culture model. It's adapted from Frederick Laloux's brilliant work on reinventing organizations, which is itself evolved and adapted from earlier work on spiral dynamics. And so there's some important shifts, but ultimately we're seeing that, and this is our sense making of this journey, is that essentially as we evolve people, as people shift in their consciousness, their mindset, their worldview, they have an evolved outlook on themselves and others. What we see here is that there's a shift in the engagements and the outcomes of organizations, right? So there's a cause and effect. As people evolve, we're going to see more evolved outcomes, higher performance outcomes. So we can understand different cultural stages of evolution, originally starting with cultures that are about power and structure, authority, formal roles, and so on. Very, very traditional, power-oriented hierarchical organizations. And now in the modern world, while there might be still some of this present, we've largely moved on to the typical multinational business, which is all about achievement. We want to start to have innovation. It's about bigger, better. How do we work together? How do we work smart? How do we optimize this machine? Right? Treating the organization like a machine. As we continue on this journey of evolution, we start to see even more evolved people, more evolved leaders, more evolved cultures, which have higher performance, better results by treating people really well, by creating a sense of purpose, a shared sense of values, starting to share power with people in very fundamental ways. And really, we can understand this as, at least for our current stage of evolution as humanity, the current endpoint would be a place of shared power. Now, shared power is a ridiculous concept. You should probably not do this in your environment, because the prerequisite for this is that we have people who act like adults, who take full responsibility for their behavior. Unless we have people who act like adults and take responsibility, none of this will make sense. We need to have evolved people who act like adults, take responsibility, are motivated, and so on. Then we can have shared power. Then we can have a decentralized network for decision making. Then we can have emergence of people co-creating and leading the future. Then self-management will make sense. And then we can fully welcome a person. Treating them like an adult is the most powerful way you can treat another human being. Right? So what we're seeing here is a shift. As we shift people, as we shift the culture of our organizational system, we're going to get better and better results. Now, there's this really dividing line between more traditional types of organizational systems and what we can call evolutionary ones that are much more adaptable. And then thinking about it, well, high performance, where does that live? Well, business agility is over here. It comes from an evolved organizational system that can operate in an evolved way. That's what agility comes from. People are agile at an individual level. They have that adaptability. That gives adaptability at the organizational level. So that's why we've used this picture of it, this traditional evolutionary, to understand, well, what is this journey of not just shifting culture, which we're just pointing at there. This is just the one dimension we're looking at here, but shifting all these different layers, all these different dimensions of organizational functioning. That's the multi-dimensional shift that's needed to undertake this kind of journey. So let's dive in further. Let's look at leading. How do we want to rethink and reimagine and re-understand leading? How do we lead into the beyond? How do I function in a way, the kind of leader that can lead people on this journey that they come with us? What does that even mean? Well, to contrast what's needed, I want to talk about modern management. Modern management is oppression, right? When we're running in a traditional business pattern, it's oppression. Now, why do I say that? Well, there's an original idea that's floating around the background is that workers have no brains. And only the manager, usually the top one, has a brain, right? These workers have no brains. And now as a result, and you may see this in your organizational system, what happens is the manager will start creating processes and procedures that define standardized work. They're going to measure quantity through reports. They're going to set up bonus programs to kind of, entice workers to show up better. They're going to create plans and direct workers to tell them what to do, right? All these structures reinforce with workers that they have no brains, right? This is the oppressive nature of most of our organizational systems. So most of our organizational systems are operating in a very traditional way that creates a high level of disengagement. So if we want to create a different kind of outcome, we need to operate in a different way. We need to operate in a way that's very, very different from this. So we're not talking about servant leadership. Just to clarify, servant leadership is a very beautiful concept. We have a lot of admiration for it. It's 50 years old. It's time to retire it. It is insufficient. It has some great qualities, but it's insufficient for going on this kind of journey. Instead, we're going to offer you something different. Evolutionary leadership. Evolutionary leadership is a term that's been around for a while. We're going to give you our definition at Shift 314 of what we define as evolutionary leadership. Evolutionary leadership is the choice to evolve oneself and develop the capabilities needed to evolve an organization. So evolutionary leader says, well, hey, I'm going to change how I show up. If everybody needs to evolve to create a more evolved organizational system, I need to evolve. And so I can focus on my own evolution and I can learn how to help other people on the journey. When you have leaders who meet this criteria, they'll very naturally not just evolve to have the capabilities of a servant leader, but beyond that. Right? So this is the actual essence of what's needed to lead this kind of evolutionary journey, to increase our ability to lead this kind of journey. And it's an integrated understanding that it's a doing and a being. They're very practical skills, techniques, knowledge, models, information we need to undertake operating in a more evolved way. But more importantly, there's a shift in our being. There's a shift in the core, the essence of who we are. So we're showing up as that calm, resourced leader that can inspire people to go on this kind of journey, right? That's a shift in how we are. Most of us, we're so caught up in the doing, the busy work, we're not able to show up as our best selves. That's a shift that we need to inspire people to come on this journey. Now, the most essential aspect is what we call an evolutionary mindset. Now, again, you might have heard of some of this, but we're going to extend it to something that's novel and new for you. Now, we've probably heard of Carol Dweck's work, which talks about moving from a growth mindset to a fixed mindset and contrasting these two different mindsets. Now, when you look at somebody, let's say there's a problem or a challenge, maybe there's a production outage in your environment, or there's a big problem like, what do we need to do with people returning back to work? What do we do with this COVID situation? Whatever kind of problem you're looking at, there's some people who are going to respond with a fixed mindset. Well, that's it. I'm stuck. I can't do anything in this situation, right? I'm totally at effect here, right? I'm totally powerless to do anything. Now, the people who are much more resourced, they're in a growth mindset. They say, oh, well, this is interesting. What can we learn from this? They think mistakes are part of growth and they welcome feedback. So, looking at COVID, just to take a very appropriate example, say, well, great, we have this new situation. What can we do together? How can we solve this as a community, as a team? What can we do differently to adapt to this current changing need, right? As a system, how do we change the way our work practices go? How do we change how we're functioning? How do we, restructure things to adapt to this new need? But that's not sufficient to go on an evolutionary journey. What's actually required is what we call an evolutionary mindset, where we say, well, what does this say about me? How can I grow? So it's about self-learning, our state of being, our consciousness. And so coming back to this example of COVID, we're saying, well, what's going on with me? How am I showing up disengaged? How am I showing up unmotivated? How am I having a challenge balancing my needs versus the organization's needs? Am I really doing my best to show up as a motivated, responsible worker right now? Or am I letting the situation take me out? Or, there's this, something new, comes out in the news, and how am I responding to all of this? And how can I play a different role in helping my organization, my team function better to resolve this challenge? Right? In a growth mindset, we're open to learning. Sure, of course we are, about the process, about the system, about what's happening around us. When we move to an evolutionary mindset, we're ready to take a step deeper and look inwards at ourself, our behavior patterns, our attitudes, to see and get to root cause of what are actually all these challenges. In Agile, we say, well, we want to have an environment with high collaboration. Well, you can only go so far with a growth mindset. People actually need to shift through disruptive behavior patterns, which requires an evolutionary mindset, in order to collaborate at their best, to really create extraordinary teams, extraordinary organizational systems. That requires self-knowledge, self-learning. And that's what we call as an evolutionary mindset, which is this key characteristic of somebody who chooses to be an evolutionary leader. It's the choice to evolve. It's the choice to grow at an individual level. So let's talk about the final dimension, change. Change. How do we lead change in a way that can take us to the beyond? How do we move beyond our current limited understandings of change? So what I'm going to share is a model that we created called the complexity spectrum. There's some very incredible work created by David Snowden, where he talks about the Kneffin model. And what we've done is adapted this and extended this to make it much more practical and relevant for how do I understand what I'm doing every day, whether I'm working on a project, whether I'm talking about evolving my organizational system. And what we can do is we can ask ourselves, well, where is my challenge on the complexity spectrum? Are I dealing with something that's low complexity or something that's high complexity? And what we can see here is that as human beings, the way we're going to handle challenges that are low complexity, we'll do things like standards, best practices, checklists, right? That's a really good way to handle low complexity. When the complexity gets higher, we're going to want to get the data, do some analysis, maybe come up with a plan, get an expert to look at it, right? And when the complexity gets even higher, this is where we're going to go into what we typically associate with agile or exploratory work. We're going to learn, we're going to experiment, we're going to have prototypes, we're going to iterate. It's a world of learning and discovery. But when complexity gets even higher, then all we can do is wait for something to happen or take some random action or surrender to what's happening. Now, what does this mean? Well, when we think about evolving our organizational system to going on this kind of evolutionary journey, that requires that we operate over here at a very, very high level of complexity, right? Which means that our daily work is not about following plans and so on. We might do planning and analysis and so on, of course, but it's all about how do we, on a daily basis, run and get really comfortable with the uncertainty and run experiments. Now, when we look at that, there's a very powerful tool, running safe to run experiments. I'm only going to run an experiment if it's actually safe for me to run. If it's not safe for me to run, I'm not going to do it, right? So we want to get people in this mindset on a daily basis of running experiments. But when we start to think about it, well, wait a second. Can people actually run experiments? And what we see here is that the key ingredient is a higher level of psychological safety. That if people do not have psychological safety, they're operating over here at the lower end of the spectrum, they're only going to be comfortable with best practices. Just tell me what to do. Give me the plan. If there's no safety, there's no possible way we can run an experiment. What we require is higher levels of psychological safety over here in order for people to actually be able to run an experiment. Now, in traditional organizations, you can run any experiment you want as long as it's guaranteed to succeed, meaning it's predictable, right? And you may know that, you've heard of that in your organizations, right? So, and how do you know it's actually safe for you to run an experiment? Well, because your leaders run the experiment and they're reporting on their successes, their failures, their learnings. That's how you know it's actually safe for you. So if your boss isn't running experiments, it's probably not safe for you to run experiments. That's a great test for the safety of your environment. Now, looking at this in terms of culture, what we see is we can overlay culture, we can overlay psychological safety here. That we're only going to get psychological safety, high levels of it, from a more evolved culture system. So the only way that we're able to adapt and keep up with the change is from having an evolved culture system, right? So it creates this paradox. Well, I need to operate in an evolved way to go on this kind of journey, but I'm not. I'm operating over here. Like, how do I do that? Well, this is why we're saying there's this map. We have this map for this what's this map? We have this map for this multi-dimensional shift. This map is taking us to this understanding of like, well, we just need to know, where are we? Where am I as a leader? Where is my organizational system, or my fractal of it, my department, my team? Where are we in the journey, and how do we start moving? And what layer is safe to move forward right now, and how do we move that forward? That's the shift that we're inviting you to consider. So ultimately, and I'm just going to summarize here where we've been. We've talked about an integrated understanding of culture, leadership, and organizational change that is probably talking about familiar concepts, but takes it up to the next level of understanding that creates the unlock for the journey towards high performance. And ultimately, what we're speaking about here is the evolution of high performance, that when we work on ourselves, you, me, everybody, what we're going to end up creating is leaders at all levels of the organizational system. It's not about waiting for anybody else. It's about us starting now, today, with ourselves to create leaders at all levels, which will then create us a healthy organizational environment and culture, which in turn will give us a place where agile and other new ways of working will thrive. That will give us the results, the business agility, the VUCA thrivability that we hope for. This is the evolution of high performance. And it's this multi-layered journey. And for us to go on this kind of journey, well, we need to level up. to understand, well, what are all these shifts? What are all these different levels? How do I understand and orient on the journey? So it's really about how do I scale excellence with people? Because if it's about the evolution of every person, every self, every individual, how do we bring everyone on the journey? How do we do that with people? So what's required is a dynamic, emergent evolutionary framework. If we have a fixed model, we're only going to get a fixed result. So what we want is a way, a technology that allows us to understand our organizational system and evolve it. That's what the Shift Evolutionary Leadership Framework is about. It's about how to scale excellence with people. It's called the Shift Evolutionary Leadership Framework, or SELF, because there's no way to scale excellence without involving each individual, each self, each person. It's how to scale excellence with people, not to make people do things, not to try to convince them and get them to go on some journey. That's old school change. It doesn't lead to lasting success. It's about how to inspire people to build the desire so they go on a journey. It's an integrated shift to high performance to understand that the results come from the tactics. Those tactics depend on strategy. Strategy depends on culture, and culture depends on leaders at all levels. So it's about understanding that whenever we're approaching any kind of change, a tactical change, strategic change, culture change, it's about doing that in a way that builds leaders at all levels, that builds more engaged, motivated people, right? And ultimately, that's what this whole journey of building high performance, of scaling excellence is all about. So the SELF framework, I have this diagram to summarize what is it really all about. It's about evolving your organizational DNA. And again, it could be any level of your organization. It could be your team, it could be your department, it could be your whole organizational system. In fact, most organizations have different DNA fragments in different departments and so on. So they actually need a different treatment. And it's moving beyond tactics and strategy to look at how do we use culture and leadership? How do we use an integrated approach that involves all of these elements to evolve the DNA of the organization? Now, the framework itself is kind of like an unframework. It's more like a collection of things you can use, maps to orient and guide yourself. We've been sharing a few of those. Principles, so you can reason about the laws of cause and effect and understand what will serve, what will not. Models to do analysis, to reason about what's happening, to make forecasts, predictions, and understand what's going on. And very practical tools that you can use to make daily change. So this is what the SELF framework offers, is this emergent framework to allow you to undertake this kind of evolutionary journey. And it's actually a pluggable framework. So we have no attachment whether you want to use your favorite scaling framework, because we're dealing with a layer underneath that unlocks everything. So what we're sharing here is a guide for leaders, right? And it's primarily documented in a book, Leading Beyond Change. It's giving level 1 of the SELF framework. And what is this about? And I'm just going to go through this here to give you a sense of the kinds of shifts that are required. It's about unlearning reality, to move from denial to discovering what's happening, to repattern what we think is high performance, what we think results are, to understand a deeper understanding of organizational culture and integrate people in all aspects of organizational functioning, and overcoming what we call the paradox of power, knowing how to use power for good, patterns and tools for evolving your organizational system forward, and finally, patterns for how do you evolve yourself? How do you evolve the other leaders around you to create the high performance organizational system you're hoping for? And so what is the journey ahead? If you're interested in learning more about this, we've got lots of articles on our blog. I think these are in our vendor site. You can go check it out. And training, whether it's Leading Beyond Change or with our certified agile leadership training. This is like the places to go more. We also have a workshop on Friday. Hope you can join us there. We're going to dive into the details of evolutionary leadership and how to make that shift. Now, to close, I just want to talk about, well, how do you integrate all this understanding? How do you understand? Well, when we're thinking about going on an evolutionary journey, the really important question that we'd like you to ask yourself is, well, what is your current rate of evolution of yourself, of your organization? And what are the evolutionary capabilities that you have at an individual level and an organizational level? And what we've realized is it's not just about getting results today. It's about pausing and looking, well, what is our rate of evolution as an organization? What is my rate of evolution as a leader? And what are the evolutionary capabilities we have? So what we've realized that to win this game of evolution, it's actually about acquiring evolutionary capabilities and increasing our evolutionary capabilities. When you at an individual level increase your evolutionary capabilities, when as an organizational system, the evolutionary capabilities increase, then the journey is on. Then the journey will unfold at a much greater rate than would be available previously. So that's the thought I'd like you to. I really look forward to your questions because that's how this really.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for this. Let's see. We have one question from Nikolai. He's asking us for self-management techniques to put you in the center of your life.
Okay, self-management techniques. So that's a great question. Thank you so much for that question. Let me see if I can pull up the slide I'm looking for. Hold on. That's not what I was trying to do here. That's not the button I was looking for. Okay, so let me pull something up for you. Let's go back here. I think probably the most important thing that you can, oops, I'm going to pull up the framework on evolutionary leadership. Right, it's this statement. It's the choice to evolve oneself, right? Now, it turns out this is a daily choice. This is a daily choice, and starting to become aware of what your daily choice is a very powerful thing. The other thing that I'll say is really looking at how are you responding to situations and use this model to help you guide it. Think about this. Every time you have a challenge, every time you have a problem, every time something comes up, where are you looking to first? And the default that we see with most people, most leaders is, if they're resourceful, they'll go to a growth mindset. They'll say, well, how do we solve this? What do we fix? But they're not taking this next step. This is not, you don't need some special technology. This is just pausing and saying, well, wait a second. How am I contributing to this situation? How and what I am doing helping bring this about? Where did I have inaction, or where did I have an action that wasn't helpful? So I'll give you an example of this. Let's say there's somebody on your team that has a certain behavior that's not helpful. You can use this to say, well, look, wait a second. Instead of trying to fix them, coach them, solve them as an individual, what am I doing that's contributing to their behavior? Have they been acting in certain ways and I haven't done that, haven't said anything, and I've kind of not had a crucial conversation where I could have had it earlier. Where am I not showing up at my best, right? Well, maybe, where am I getting angry? Where am I getting frustrated? Where are these things happening with me? Oh, wait a second. They're doing the same behavior that I'm doing. So how can I ask them to fix something that I haven't even resolved in myself? So it's really starting to show up like an adult, to take full responsibility for our behavior. So this is a very, very simple idea that you can put into practice to just start looking at situations, how we're reacting. It's a very simple way. It's just, where am I reacting to things? Where am I not showing up at my best? If we think of a high performance organization is one where people are responsible, showing up at their best self every day, where am I not showing up as my best self? That's probably it's kind of common sense in a way, but it's very it's really the path less traveled for leaders. A lot of people take the easy way out of trying to coach, solve for others. We're talking about the path of looking at, well, how can I show up differently to create a different outcome? It takes courage, it takes motivation. It really takes, again, I'll just come back to this. It takes the choice. That's why we have this word in teal. Most people say, oh, I'd like to show up this way. Wouldn't that be nice? But they don't actually make that daily choice. It's not like oh yeah, I'm choosing to be an evolution leader and I'm on my road. No, it's a daily choice. We see this with our graduates all the time. They put in effort, they're getting benefits, and then they get lazy and they go back to their old patterning and sort of fall out of it. And then they get stuck and they go, wait a second, what am I doing? And then they wake up and they commit themselves to the journey again. So that's really the starting place. Without this commitment to the journey and your evolution, it's very difficult to make any significant progress. Does it help answer your question? You're welcome to do a follow-up if that's possible.
If there is no further questions on that, let me see if there is any in the chat.
Yeah. Otherwise, we can just go to the next one.
Nikolai, are you satisfied with the answer? Well, basically, it depends on how you what you define as the center of your life. Also, I'm not sure if there is such a thing, unless you're really grounded and fixed in a kind of a family situation. I'm not sure. Center is a fixed thing. Now, we have a more concrete question. If you were to apply the model and, let's say, become truly evolutionary leader, from today's, let's say, do you have an example where this is actually working in the way that you see we should be doing this? Can you give us an example of a real company, a real setting where, how does this work in real? How do they, maybe you have, I don't know, whether a client or a, basically
Sure.
audience is asking for how would it look like in real, because you can become evolutionary, you can become actually a true leader, but if your surroundings and your ecosystem, your environment is not allowing you to do that, it may actually be wasted. How does this look in real, if you have some example?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we train thousands of leaders around the globe. Some people are executives, some people are directors, some people are VPs, some people are CIOs, some people are managers, some people are scrum masters, some people are consultants or agile coaches. We see people are in HR. We see people all across the board. And the framework we're sharing with you here is how you can show up no matter what, no matter what your environment. So what happens is each of us is actually a beacon of culture, right? The more evolved we are, the more powerful we are as a beacon, right? So if you're in a certain kind of environment, you need to show up in a powerful way to overcome the gravitational energy of that environment, right? To start having the impact. Now, we've seen people at all levels, even people who don't have any role, any formal authority, and so on, by changing how they show up, they're able to inspire, they're able to get people to come and ask them for help. It's not a complex technology. It just requires the choice to use it. So we've seen this again and again. It doesn't matter your role, doesn't matter what's happening in your organizational system, doesn't matter what's happening to the leaders above you. You can create this kind of shift. So that's one answer to the question. The other answer is at a very practical level. I'll tell you a case study of an organization that had an RFP, request for proposal, to do an agile adoption. And really, the leaders were really very well intentioned. They said, "Hey, we want to help our people. We want to give them this gift of agile. Can you please train them in agile and coach them in agile?" Right? That's the statement of work, because we want to get better results, right? Because nobody actually wants agile. People only want results, right? So what we looked at is we said, well, look, we can do that. And we actually did this in the contract. We said, great, we'll train all the teams in agile and we'll coach them. And so you can get better results. Fine, we'll do that. But we said, wait a second, do you want to be successful? Maybe we should take some time to make sure this is the best plan. And they said, yeah, we want to be successful. I said, great, well, let's just check some things out here. Let's just check out what's going on with your organizational environment culture. Let's check out what's happening with your leaders to see if this is the right environment for agile just to take off and give you all the benefits you hope for. And we asked them this very interesting question, which is, why do you want agile? And when they answered this question, they said, well, we don't want agile, we want these results. And when they identified the results they wanted, they realized that agile was wholly insufficient to give them results they wanted. That there were actually shifts that would need to happen in their environment, their culture, and themselves as leaders. So they had this wake up moment. They go, wait a second, we're talking about something, agile it's not a silver bullet. It can't solve all our problems that we're hoping to solve. It's ridiculous that we're trying to just do team level training and coaching. That's not going to be enough. We need to do something different. I said, so no problem. We can change the statement of work. It's in the contract, no problem. And what do? Well, I was showing up in an evolved way that helped them show up as leaders so they could co-create a healthy organization environment culture where agile and other new ways of working can thrive. And what it meant very practically is we did not do agile team level training and coaching until after 2 months. What do we do for 2 months? We spent the time getting the environment set up, helping the leaders show up and model a new way that'd be compatible with agile, helping people who'd be transitioning to Scrum Master and product owner roles, helping them get set up with understanding what was needed of them to get them ready for the kind of journey. And then we did team level training and coaching. And what we saw here in the results was extraordinary. We measured this quarter by quarter, is we could see the performance scores measured through the Gallup 12 engagement survey going up quarter after quarter after quarter, because what the focus of the leadership team was, well, hey, how can we be better leaders? Not how can we get projects delivered. They moved away from project delivery to focus on the more important product, which was their people and the organizational environment and culture. And they realized that that was really what was most important for them as leaders. So this is the kind of shift that we see when a leadership team takes this on seriously and understand, well, wait a second, my job is to look after my people. My job is to create an amazing environment where amazing results will happen. That's my job, not to like micromanage my people and get these projects delivered and products out the door. That's not the most important thing. Yeah, sure, we need to pay attention to that and understand what's happening, but that's not the core focus of me day in and day out. I need to focus elsewhere. I need to focus over here to get a different kind of result.
Thank you for that, Michael. So we have still maybe 8 minutes to go. Well, one question I have is about the concept of evolution being of the famous Darwinian evolution is of, let's say, two things: that there should be enough variety. There should be room for some experimentation and develop something new, so that you would actually see that as one of the options of moving forward. Let's say a new, mutation. I'm not sure if you can just say, I know how to be a leader, I know how to be an evolutionary leader, and I'll just do that day in, day out. Well, we're not exactly talking about something like driving a car. It's not really mechanical, right? So it is actually more like an attitude than anything else. So imagine in the sense of being more evolved, and you are in an environment that is not so evolved, or there is, let's say, resistance. So actually, I suffer from this a lot. I move faster than the others, and everybody says, stop, where are you going? You need to take the rest of the people with you. And I'm actually very bad in that sense, because I believe that it's the responsibility of the team to follow, So I would say there is also responsibility when we talk about a relationship. You cannot have a club of leaders and they all lead, right? You need to have leaders that are followed. So in a way, there's also the crowd that takes this example, and there must be some way of transmitting and having this, I don't know how you call this, what kind of mentoring role you would give to a leader that in relation to those others that are, let's say, earlier in their evolutionary leadership, how would they transmit or show them let's say, follow the same path, if this is something that you would prescribe? Or would you say, well, everyone has a different style, or every organization has a different leader? Because, if you talk about a leader in the army and a leader in a company and leader in a football club, maybe they are not the same leaders. Maybe there are different types of leadership.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for your vulnerability for admitting. But you were talking about how to scale excellence with people, right? So this is really the defining variable, right? Like you can be any kind of leader you want, but are you actually bringing people on the journey with you?
No, this is the problem. This is my problem.
Yeah, so that's right. So if you're not bringing people along the journey with you, you're really really leveled off as a kind of leader. What we've identified here with the self framework is a repeatable, replicable pattern and framework for how anyone can become a great leader. Like you don't have to be born a genius like Steve Jobs, or have emerged from your family system with such and such charisma or so on, or have a brilliant business idea. It's how anyone who can move iteratively and incrementally to a better level of leadership using very specific universal principles. Right? That's what we're giving here. Now, very practically, you're talking about adaptability and variability. What we see here is over on the evolutionary side is these are characteristics, the ability to navigate complexity, invitation, employee first, responsible, energized people, letting go of control, serving purpose, sharing decisions, leading by example, self-evolution, becoming conscious and aware. These are all characteristics that will give people evolutionary capabilities. When they have those evolutionary capabilities, their style of leadership will emerge, the style of leadership that's right for them. So I'd say there is a best leadership style for everyone listening to this. It is your leadership style. But the question is, how do you evolve yourself? How do you evolve yourself from where you are? Because each of us is somewhere as a leader, somewhere on our journey of evolution. We either have a low rate of evolution or we have a high rate of evolution. It's about how do we increase our rate of evolution so we can move closer and closer to the ideal leader that we are meant to be, based on our some things that are not changeable in our nature and so on. So that's really the thing is am I investing in exploring the surface of moving from where I am as a leader towards myself being an extraordinary leader? And what we're seeing here in this evolution of high performance, and this is really the measure of your success as a leader, how successful are you building other leaders? That's it. Your measure of success as a leader is, are you able to create other leaders, people who are resourceful, motivated, and themselves creating other leaders? Are you able to create leaders that are able to inspire and bring other people in the journey? That's really your test of leadership. When you meet this test, it means there's going to be this cascading effect, this ripple effect of your brilliance lighting up the brilliance in others, that then lights up the brilliance in others, that creates this cascading ripple effect to create engaged, motivated, passionate people that are able to create extraordinary results. If we're not able to inspire other people to show up as better leaders, if we're just this command and control micromanager and we're so focused on results and not about building people, and we haven't learned that, we haven't evolved those capabilities, that's the work to be done. And all of us have some work left to do. We're all on our journey. Me, you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. We're kind of running out of time. We have one more question, which is, I think, is a repeat in a sense that Surya is asking about the evolutionary mindset in a large organization. So I think maybe large means a bit more complicated. I don't say complex, complicated in terms of structures and bureaucracy, but so maybe the answers are more or less the same.
Yeah, so just to be clear, it doesn't matter whether you're a team of 7 people or a company of 70,000. It doesn't matter. There's going to be some percentage of people in your organization that have a fixed mindset. That have a fixed mindset, a certain percentage that have a growth mindset, and a certain percentage that have an evolutionary mindset. That's it. At a current point in time. Now, our job as stewards of the system is, how do we help people move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, from a growth mindset to an evolutionary mindset? And that's where the whole framework comes in, is how do we get people to light up? How do we increase psychological safety? How do we as leaders stop and get out of this command and control habit that we're all deeply mired and stuck in? That's what this whole journey is about. This is what this whole self framework is about. Like we didn't plan to invent, just to be clear, talking about evolutionary, we did not plan to create a framework. We were just figuring out, well, how do we create high performance? What changes are needed? And over time, we were looked back, and this actually happened in a mad rewrite of the book 3 weeks before the deadline. It's, wait a second, we actually have created a framework here. We've got a set of maps, models, tools, principles to guide people in how to go on this journey towards high performance. But it was actually itself an emergent result. I'd say everything we're sharing here is an emergent result itself. I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, let me plan this. I've been working at this diligently, running experiments, trying this, trying that, my whole career, to figure out, how do we unlock people? How do we unlock change? How do we unlock our organizational systems to perform better? And that's what we shared here today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Michael. I think it's quite late here in the sense that we've been doing it all day. So if you don't mind, we'll stop here. Can you say just one sentence, one advertisement of what to expect from your workshop so that people can also maybe, if they're interested to explore more, they can register for it?
Yeah, so this is a hands-on workshop to really dive into what is evolutionary leadership, to really get a sense of, well, how am I showing up as a leader? How do I need to show up? Where are some gaps? How do we start to make progress on this journey and get some very practical tools that you can start to use to really, in this short time we have, 2 hours together, to increase your evolutionary capabilities.
The workshop is on December the 3rd. You can see it in the agenda normally. If you are not seeing it, please let us know. So let me just go to the agenda myself so that I can tell you exactly. So you click on the tab, Friday, December the 3rd, and we have different tracks, but you could just search for evolution, right? So from servant leadership to evolutionary leadership workshop, it's basically like 4 hours before now. So it starts at 4 p.m. in Bulgaria and finishes at 6 p.m. So, yeah, can you see it in the agenda? From servant leadership to evolutionary leadership. With this, Michael, I say thank you, and I'll go pop out for a cigarette and some oxygen. Thank you so much, and see you on Friday.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you,
My
Michael.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye.